We are here today with uh, Professor Matthias Maute, and Professor Maute. He has asked me to call him Matthias. Thank you for that. Thank you, Matthias. Thank you for being here with us today. I consider it a great privilege. And as we already know, Matthias Maute is a very well-known conductor, a great recorder player and flute player. I think you also play violin, right?
I grew up with violin, but actually I stopped playing.
Uh-huh. And he's also a great composer. He has composed many works for the recorder. Many of them are currently played by very well-known recorder players of the world. So thank you very much, Matthias, for being here today with us. And
Pleasure.
I would like to ask you first a little bit about yourself. So would you please tell us why did you choose a recorder? Because as we were talking some moments ago, everybody or a lot of people think the recorder is just a toy. Would you please explain us why did you choose this instrument for making a career?
So I grew up in Germany, and back then in the 60s, it was normal for everybody who wanted to learn an instrument to start with the recorder and then take on a real instrument. So I was like 4 when I started the recorder. I was 10 when I started the violin. And actually, I had a fantastic violin teacher, so I really loved playing the violin. But it turned out that between the two instruments, the recorder had chosen me and not the violin. Whenever I did the recorder, everything came much easier to me than on the violin. So ultimately, that led to the demise of the violin in my life. After many years, I'm not playing anymore, but the recorder was my instrument that I studied. I won the competition in Bruges with 1990, and I had my international career ever since. So the recorder, my entire life, professional life, is based on the recorder.
Oh, that is very interesting because many people say that the recorder doesn't sound good or that the recorder doesn't have expression. So it's interesting that you chose the recorder over the violin.
Well, as I said, the violin did not choose me, the recorder chose me. I was much better on the recorder than on the violin, and there was nothing I could do. And okay. I'm very happy with that decision. As it turns out, people who claim what you just said usually need education. They need to know what we can do with our wonderful instrument. And often when we are in a concert situation, as a recorder player, we really manage to surprise people by the virtuosity, the expression of our instrument. And that's something we have, that wonderful treasure, and we should not be being deterred by what many people say or claim, because we as recorder players, we know better what a treasure we have in our lives when we play the recorder.
Yeah, I know. I can understand what you say because I have already seen so many inspiring videos of you. Can you tell us when you chose or when you decided that the recorder was going to be the serious instrument of your life? Can you tell me how many hours you were used to practice in a day?
Well, for instance, when I went to Holland, I studied in Germany, then I went to Holland, and there I did around 4 hours a day. And I have to say, I'm still living on that incredible intensity of practicing, exploring repertoire. It really helps a lot as a musician, as a young musician, to practice a lot, because that's when you acquire the whole foundation for the entire life.
Yeah, I'm making you this question because I'm also a recorder teacher, and many parents would ask you, "Oh, so my children or my son, would you please tell me how many hours he should study a day?" And I sometimes tell them it doesn't matter so much how many hours, a day you play. It's more important how you practice the hours you play, right? Or the hours you practice. So what would you say? Do you say, I think it's important, maybe both, right? If you are going to practice.
I taught from 1990 to 99. I was teaching at a music school in Germany, and my students were age range between 6 and 18. And usually, what I would tell them, the ideal situation is that practice 2 times a day, 15 minutes. It seems to be very little, but you have to find a situation where children are actually willing to do as much as 2 times 15 minutes. Why 2 times? Because 30 minutes is already too long for many kids. 15 minutes seems to be doable, and you just cut it into 2, but the 15 minutes should be really intense and very focused. And by doing that, it's possible to have progress. And I have to admit that as a teacher, my main goal was not, after a couple of years, I realized that if the main goal is to get the best students and playing on the highest level possible, it's maybe not the ultimate goal. For me, the ultimate goal was to create a situation where music seemed to be like a nice, fulfilling, fun activity for young children by being exposed to music, by playing and by enjoying the situation of being the lesson itself. That they keep something that they, when they look back in their later life, that they have very positive associations with. Because as it turns out, if you look at the research that has been done, 80% of students, once they reach the level of going to university, they actually stop playing the instrument. So no matter what we do, 80% will stop and very few keep going. It's another matter that later in their life, many return to playing an instrument because they realize, hey, something is missing. I would like to have that fun activity. But that's why I think it's important that in our days, we have a pedagogical approach that has both the effort and the focus on the one hand. And so we accomplish a goal. On the other hand, we inject that part where it's clearly something that it's part of a fulfilling life and part of the fun that we all want to have. So that together led to a situation where my students were never the absolute best students in competitions, but even after having moved to Canada 10 years later, I was still in touch with them because we just, there was a real relationship in terms of human connection. And based on music that we shared together, it was fun to share that and to work together on stuff. So that was my personal approach as teacher, and more or less successful. On some levels, very successful, on others less. So I can't even say I could recommend it to you, and I hope I don't undermine your efforts with your students. But with young students, I felt that if they do 2 times 15 minutes and then really focus, nothing else, that this can lead to a gradual progress.
Excellent. And it's also interesting that you have this approach for music players, because music is supposed to make you happy, to make you to enrich your life, and
well,
so
it's the only goal that really counts. If you think what is music, and it's such an abstract thing, we can't touch it, we can't see it, we can only hear it, and once we have played a piece, it's already gone. It's very tough to find out what is the reality behind music. And so for me, it turned out that the most important part of music is that it without music, it's very difficult to have a fulfilled life, and that's what everything is about. So there you go.
Yeah, I think everybody can agree with you. But in the case that somebody, maybe a teenager, decides that music is going to be part of his life in a professional way,
that's a different story.
Yeah, have you heard about, for example, the 10,000 hours of practice rule? Do you agree with this idea, or do you think it's something more like relative?
It's a very interesting question, because it's not enough to talk about 10,000 hours. It's about 10,000 hours at which age range. I know a lot about it because I have learned instruments in different stages of my life. Recorder, I started with when I was 4. I started violin when I was 10. I started to play the Baroque, and I started conducting when I was 15 years old. I started the Baroque flute when I was like 24, 25. And it's possible on all the different activities to reach a certain level. However, if I look at the reflexes that I developed, they come easiest to me with the recorder, easier than any other thing, because it's if you spend many hours as a young kid, it just shapes your brain in a different way. That's my experience. So with the Baroque flute, when I play, my goal was to sound like a real flute player and not like a recorder player who also plays the flute. And according to my ears, I have achieved that goal. But there are many things I can't do on the Baroque flute as opposed to what I can on the recorder. I just never managed to get the same dexterity because it was a later stage of my life. So the same 10,000 hours I spent on the flute led to a satisfying result, as in that is I can use it in my professional life. I played many concerts as soloist, as a team player, as ensemble player, and all over the world. But I can do things on recorder I would never be able to do on the flute. Because the recorder, I was like 4 years old when I started, and it's way down in my subconsciousness. Everything is sort of anchored in layers that all the other instruments could never reach because I started later.
Oh, interesting. So, what do you think is the critical age to start to learn an instrument?
Well, they say that if you learn a language, you have to, from 1 to 9, you can learn it like a mother language. But then the brain gradually loses its capacities to ingrain a language the same way it does like young babies learn a language. So I think for instruments it's the same. You can always learn later. It's not, and all adults should learn instruments. But and I think if you learn later, you can actually learn faster at the beginning. But at some point you reach you hit the bottom, and you can't actually go beyond that. Whereas kids, they just keep going. And I see it with my own children. They're 13 and 11 now, and I'm always amazed how constantly they grow with their instruments, and they learn to master things that 2 weeks ago they would not have been able to, and now they can. And for an adult, at some point you can't go beyond a certain level.
Okay, so it's very critical to start early then.
But if you want to become a professional player on a very high level, it's highly recommendable. It's not ultimately not necessary either, because as a recorder player, where can you go as a soloist? You can always teach as a professional teacher. You can always do chamber music projects. You don't have to in order to become a professional musician. But to have that natural feel with an instrument, it helps to be young when you start. Yeah.
Okay. We also have some students who start late. Do they have some hope to improve?
That's what I say. Actually, what they can do, they can apply conscious strategies, and that's why they learn faster, because they're much more ordered the way they learn, and so that will be very satisfying. It's just at a certain point to develop the reflex of subconscious reaction to what you need to do. That's something. It's different when you learn at an older age compared to young children. It's just your subconsciousness doesn't react that fast. That's why subconsciousness, because in music, technical dexterity is nothing else but our subconsciousness at work, because we can't do it consciously. It's too complex. The only way to actually handle that is that we let our subconsciousness do all the work. Yeah. Because as an adult, we learn everything consciously, and we are much better in that on that level than compared to kids. But they can much more integrate it into their subconscious perception and reaction that they need to do.
Yeah, you're right. Do you have, by the way, perfect pitch?
I don't. My son has, but I don't.
But anyway, I think you have a very well-trained ear. And do you think this, obviously it helps, right? to have a very well trained ear.
It certainly does. For me, for instance, playing the violin was a big help, because whatever you do there are always other strings around that you can compare it to. If you have the right pitch on a recorder, you play something and it's hard to really measure, is it a pure fifth or not? But on the violin, you can actually play it at the same time with an open string. And so you develop, I have a good relative ear, but I don't have absolute pitch, no.
But maybe it helps, because I saw you play so many pieces just by heart. So what is your technique to learn a piece to play by heart? Is it easier to memorize when you have a very well trained ear?
It certainly helps because you use your imagination. You sort of have to, you know the melodic line that you're playing, and you know the melodic line of the next few bars when you play from memory. Without that knowledge, you can't really proceed. So it's that kind of melodic imagination that you use all the time when you play from memory. And so it helps to have a good ear. But it's also, interesting enough, I found out, it has a lot to do with your tactile feel. Like it seems to be like our fingers and our tongue. At some point, they just know and remember what they have been doing in the past. And that collective memory of all your fingers, it's possible to trust on that too. So it's a combination of different memories, the melodic memory, the rhythmic memory, the harmonic memory, the tactile memory, and pieces that we have, like pieces that I've played when I was young. It's very easy to remember those because that's what our brain does when we are young. It's very perceptive to learning new things. So that all combined helps to learn stuff from memory. Yeah.
Oh, okay, interesting. And that has also a lot to do to start to learn the instrument early, right? When you're a little child, I think. So I have another question. How did you get to Canada?
Oh, it was a love story. Yes. So I grew up in Germany, and I was firmly established in Europe. I just had won the competition in Bruges in 1990. The soloist competition was awarded first prize. So my career was really set in Europe. But then I met my former wife, and she's French-Canadian from Montreal. So in 1999, I decided to go to Canada, at this point not knowing how that would impact my professional life. But it turned out that it was an excellent decision, because Ensemble Caprice, the ensemble we run together, she's a musician too, an excellent recorder player and flute player, we do the same thing. So it turned out to be a very good decision, and the ensemble has really taken on new flights ever since I moved here. And so we do, out of the 50 concerts that Ensemble Caprice plays roughly per year, we do most of them together. So it's great fun. It was the best decision of my life to come to Montreal.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So was Ensemble Caprice founded by you and your wife, right?
Actually, no. It was founded in 1989 in Germany, and it was me and a gamba player. So we had two musicians. A couple of months ago, our 30th anniversary here in Montreal with 60 musicians on stage. We did a B minor mass by Bach. It was actually incredible to see that, like 30 years ago, we started with two musicians. Now we have 60 musicians after 30 years and do a repertoire that is also very different. For me, that was very touching, because that personal initiative at the beginning has evolved into something public, and we now have it's a big organization with we have an orchestra, a choir, we have an endowment fund in perpetuity. So Ensemble Caprice has become a strong player here in Canada.
Yeah, excellent. Congratulations because of this. Is it difficult to fund all the activities that the Ensemble Caprice do?
Well, in the arts, it's a fragile environment. However, in Canada, there's funding on various levels that people can access. We have funding from Montreal Arts Council, from the Quebec Arts Council, and sometimes from the Canada Arts Council. That's one thing. but we have also our endowment fund in perpetuity, where we can never use the capital, but we get always the interest in perpetuity. So we know for now that Astronomy Caprice will be going on forever, because we have that support and financial spine.
Oh,
so
great.
What we started doing is that we started touring on a bigger scale with bigger formations. So usually one can do only bigger formations in your hometown where you can collect enough resources. Now, for instance, we started touring with 40 musicians and singers in Quebec, and with 20 musicians and singers in Canada. We also did that internationally, and in combination with the Bach Society of Minnesota that I happen to be the artistic director of. So there are different ways that we manage to get, to enlarge in our horizon and to tour on a bigger scale. Excellent. Funding is always a problem, but we have managed to find ways that enables us to grow and to great expansion, which is wonderful.
Yeah, excellent. I think it's sometimes so difficult to fund such kind of projects in Latin America. So it's great that you don't have to worry about this. I have also seen that your ensemble has recorded many CDs. Yeah. Right. And I found they were really interesting projects. For example, you have one CD that is one album that is called Salsa Baroque.
Right.
And I have been listening to this CD yesterday, and it has very interesting material from different countries of Latin America.
It does. It probably feels weird for you that someone else plays music from your home continent. And there's also the famous Hanak Pachap that was it's such an incredible piece. I fell in love with that repertoire. And the whole idea of the Salsa Baroque was, for me, was more like a real discovery, because I didn't know a lot about that repertoire, and to find ways to integrate the record and the flute into that repertoire was very exciting, because it was for me like discovering a new room in the house of music that I had never really accessed before. As when we start with like Baroque repertoire, often we do like Telemann, Bach, Vivaldi, and like South American or Central American composers are not really on the menu at that stage. And it turned out, because it's nothing of that is originally scored like that for the recorder, but it's obvious that these instruments were all in use, and most of the scores that I used for that recording were actually organ scores that then needed to be arranged for instruments. And that was just a wonderful thing to do, and the repertoire turned out to be sometimes quite difficult to play, and in all cases very inspiring.
How did you choose this specific repertoire? Did you have anybody who helped you to choose the pieces?
I had some advice, and I looked around and tried to find music music that is inspired and will inspire many performances. What happened with that program, the Salsa Baroque, we did many tours with that, and we have played like many times on different continents. What we also discovered, the project was firstly a CD project, but then we started transforming the same, instead of having like 6 singers and 12 instrumentalists, we on tour usually perform with 5 instrumentalists, sometimes adding a singer, but mostly it's just 5 musicians, and the same music can be transformed into like a bigger scope or a smaller setting, and it's still the music does the job and just carries us away. We also discovered that in that music there's like a story that is hidden. So all of a sudden in a concert, it's a story that I'm the narrator, and we are leaving Spain on a boat and go all the way to South America, and on the trip on the boat all kinds of things happen, always related to the music. So there's a set of music, short narration, and so on. And
interesting.
At the end of the program, we arrive on the other side of the ocean. And so the music really tells the story of how it must have been when people left their home country and ended up being somewhere else, and how that feels. And we did that program also on tour in Bolivia, Colombia, Mexico, and Ecuador. We hadn't have the chance to go to Peru yet, but I hope at some point it will be possible.
Yeah, that was the exact thing I was going to ask you. Do you have any plans to come to Peru, or do you?
I would love to, and I'm happy if there are any ideas to follow up with, because this would be for to travel to Central America. We started Mexico and then to South America. For me, that was a dream that came true, and we just had the most incredible meetings and situations with people that enjoyed music so much. It was like a new life that I never really had the chance to be in touch with. So I was very grateful for that, and I hope there will be more in the future.
Yeah, we hope to have you here someday.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was okay. I have many more questions here for you. A little bit about the composer. How many works do you have composed for the recorder?
I would not know. Like lately, I wrote a concerto for record and two violins lately that has not even been played or been published. It will be premiered in the States this summer. So I've published around, I would say, 25 to 30 pieces that are published. I have a whole series of pieces that are just sitting in my basement, and some of the pieces are also incorporated in our programs. For instance, I also Vivaldi's opera Montezuma that is set in Mexico. 50% of the music was lost, so I rewrote that music, the 50% of the lost music. So I did all kinds of different things as a composer. But for recorder, I wrote a book based on improvisation for the recorder. Unfortunately,
nice.
it's in German. Bear Writer in Germany published it, so it's like 2 volumes for improvisation. Yeah, I've been doing a lot because I tried to find music to write music that where I could express myself as a player with all the things that I explored while practicing, while playing, and I tried to find music that would work with what I found out myself. So I had a great pleasure doing that.
Yeah, I have heard your compositions, and I think they are really very nice to hear and very interesting.
Thank you, I really appreciate it.
Regarding this, I was trying to find out if I could buy them on Amazon, and it seems a little bit difficult to buy them on Amazon. So, what do you think are the right channels to find your music?
That's a very good question. Well, I guess it would be possible in the States, the Van Hoenen workshop, they could probably send music. There are stores in Canada that I could recommend, and they would send the music. So I guess, or to order directly in Europe, also with the publishing houses, might also be possible. But it can be tricky. But if you have questions, let me know.
Okay, thanks. So, in order to finish our interview, thank you very much for your time. I have a very quick Q&A section here.
Yeah.
So, if you feel uncomfortable with any of the questions, just say pass.
What are you having for breakfast?
So, Matthias, what's your age?
I'm 55.
Where were you born?
In Germany.
How many children do you have?
I have 2 children.
How many languages do you speak?
4.
So German, French,
English? And Dutch.
And Dutch. Okay, excellent. What is your favorite color?
My favorite color?
Yes.
Red.
Red. Okay. By the way, I saw a video of you playing with Pierce Adams from Red Priest.
Right. That was a good concert.
Yes. What is your favorite food?
I love my favorite food.
La poutine.
No, oh, right. No, you know what? I have never had poutine. French fries.
How come?
Oh, I don't like it.
But you live in Montreal.
I know. Well, there you go.
Okay, so what was it? Your favorite food or dish?
Favorite food? It would be. I don't know. I have many food. I'm I'm vegetarian, so that's all. I don't eat.
Okay.
Everything's that's fine.
Okay. Do you have a pet?
No.
Okay. How do you go to work? What's your favorite mode of transport?
Well, my office is at home. I don't take any morning in the week. So most of the work days I'm at home in my office, my home. I'm very lucky.
Okay. And this is a very important question. What is your favorite brand of recorder?
Well, here in Montreal we are very lucky because we have an excellent recorder maker, Jean-Luc Boudreau. It's our world class, and it's just wonderful. And in Canada we have also Bob Marvin, who makes wonderful. Bob Marvin. Bob Marvin, the Amsterdam guitarist, played his instruments. Le Flanders Recorder Quartet plays his instruments. He's that legendary U.S. American recorder maker who lives in Canada and makes Renaissance recorders, and they're just top class.
Okay, excellent. And do you use plastic recorders?
I don't.
You don't like them, or for any specific reason?
Yes, because they glock all the time. Because humidity cannot go away; it's always stuck in the plastic. And the depth of sound, I just don't enjoy playing on them. So I have wonderful instruments from wood, and it's possible these days to get instruments made from wood that are not that expensive.
Yeah.
We don't have to take always plastic recorders.
Okay, and for a wooden recorder, what is your favorite wood?
I really like boxwood a lot.
Do you think it has a special timbre, maybe?
Well, it's to start with, it helps the recorder maker to make a fine instrument because it's quite easy to work boxwood, but it's also quite hard. So the sound that it creates, it really projects and has a strong sound. So that's what I really like with boxwood. Okay.
That is going to be an interesting opinion for our students who will lay their first wooden recorder.
I didn't understand.
Considering our students who will lay their first wooden recorder, they can consider to buy one made of boxwood, right?
Yeah, sure.
Because just for price reasons, maybe some people choose to buy first a recorder made of maple or of pear, right? But what do you think about the sound of these instruments?
It's fine. I mean, the wood itself is not that important. It's much more important how the instrument itself, how the bore is worked, how the tuning, fine tuning is done of the head joint. This is way more important than the wood. So I would go, if you look for an instrument, to not necessarily look at the wood first, but to look at who makes instruments, how are they made, how reliable are they, and then including what kind of wood is used, and so all these together make for a good instrument. But the bore and the fine tuning of the instrument are by far the most important part.
Okay, so just to finish our interview, what recommendation would you give to our students? For example, I showed you this video about who is a student of one of the poorest regions of Peru, and he was really outstanding playing the recorder, but then suddenly we don't hear about him anymore, and I think that is because maybe we don't have enough opportunities here in our country. So what do you think about this? Would you have an idea what an student like this could do in order to continue improving and developing his musicianship regarding the recorder?
Well, that's a very interesting question. And I mean, I'm a professional recorder player, and what I've observed in my own life, and I don't know how things are in Peru, but I observed for myself that my interest in instruments would have been waning if I had been focusing on a solo career as a recorder soloist. And why is that? Because if you look how many pieces actually would be interesting as in that situation as a soloist playing with an orchestra. There's a couple of Vivaldi concertos that would be interesting, some Telemann pieces. Maybe there are 10 pieces in total that would qualify for that situation as a soloist with orchestra. But who wants to spend an entire life with 10 pieces?
Yes.
And so for me, it was much more important to develop, to start with developing like a family setting where the recorder is dealt with as a family instrument. It comes in family, soprano, alto, and so where you can use the entire range with different colors in a setting with a chamber music format where you can go into all different kinds of directions. So with our song Caprice, when we go on tour, we have the Salsa program with Southern American and Central American music. We have various programs including European music. We will in 3 weeks play a program with Indian classical music that was arranged by a European composer at the end of the 18th century, again using our instruments. So we go into totally different directions as players, but not in a solo connection, but in a chamber music format. And that proved to be the right decision. The other thing that I did by learning to play the terrazzo, I work a lot with a New York-based string ensemble, Rebel, and we started together in 1991 when the Utrecht Holland Festival in Utrecht put together me as first prize winner in Bruges, and they just won a competition in Holland, and we performed together. And ever since, until now, like almost 30 years later, we perform together with repertoire with one wind instrument, I'm the player, 2 violins and continuo. And because I also play the flute, there is enough repertoire around to actually nourish that collaboration. If it were only the recorder, it would be difficult because there's not enough repertoire around. So that's the point as a recorder player, to keep the interest. First of all, you have to look after the repertoire and try to see how much you can incorporate from other, from repertoire outside the solo repertoire. I think that's the first thing. Public interest in a solo career because, it's difficult anyway. Secondly, if the repertoire is always the same, it's really difficult to keep the public interest high. So naturally, you would need to try to get a career that has different, it's grounded on different things. Solo, ensemble player, teaching, trying to make other things work out as well. So that's what I did in my life. And I started also organizing things. Now I'm much more someone who is trying to put events together and organize all these events. Ultimately, I will end up being on stage and I will be a musician like anyone else. But the only way to get there and to keep getting there is because I organized it myself. And someone who is not able or willing to do that will have a hard time to make it sustainable after 10, 15, 20 years. And among other reasons, because then younger players come and all the public attention goes to younger emerging artists. So it's tough, and I'm not surprised that sometimes you get a new star showing up, and 10 years later it's another star that eliminates whoever has been there before. So it's the biggest pride of my life as a musician that we have been able to sustain the idea of playing with recorder throughout my entire life. That's what you have managed to do, and based on that, it branched out into all different kinds of ways. And now I'm busy as a conductor, modern symphonies, period instruments. I play various instruments myself on stage. I compose a range. I organize all of that. I have my own concert series. I'm artistic director of various organizations. I conduct a professional choir here in Montreal. But all of that came out of that one tree that was planted by the recorder in my life. And that the entire tree later was based on that. So, but that's why I bring in that's my personal experience. And So I don't know exactly how that applies to the situation in Peru, but from what I've seen, that it's very helpful to have all these different kinds of pots simmering on the stove at home. And
okay.
not just one.
Okay, thank you, because you are obviously a successful musician, so we want to know a little bit of the secrets.
Well, it's not a secret. I think it's very important for a musician that I realize, because I'm teaching at 2 universities, how much all the mindset of all the students is, I do one thing and I will be a great violin player and this will be my career. They are done with university and find out in real life this is not how things work. No one is waiting for a new violinist or no one is waiting for a new pianist. You really have to make it work. And one way to do it is to work hard, to push your what you have to offer. But it's I think important to offer different things to society. So when you offer 6, 7, 8 things to society and 2 fall off the table, you still have 6 left. But if you offer just one thing to society and society says no, man, we are not interested, then you're done, you're stuck. And that's why I think it's very, very important to diversify and do many different things. And that's what I'm doing. I'm very busy because I have so many different things to do. But that's just very interesting and keeps my life really a very interesting life.
Yeah. We know you are a very, very busy person, and that's why we feel so privileged to have this opportunity to have a conversation with you. And just to end this interview, maybe can you give us a little greeting for our association in Peru?
Yes, of course. So I would like to greet all my colleagues from the Suzuki Association in Peru. Please keep doing your very important work. It's important that young children are exposed and also adults are exposed to music and to the art of playing the recorder. It has changed my life, and it is important that many other people make the same experience. The recorder seems to be a small tool, but it can be the beginning of a very fulfilled and satisfying life. And we, the recorder teachers, are crucial and essential in being helpful to getting many people involved with music. So please keep doing your great job, and I look forward maybe at some point to meet you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We expect that you come someday to Peru, and we are going to receive you with open arms.
Wonderful.
Can you also leave a little message for our students who are struggling? Many of them are like wondering, should I continue with a recorder, or maybe I should change to a more profitable instrument?
Right. Yeah. So here's a message for students. I'm Matthias Maute. I'm in Montreal, a recorder player, and I have a message for you. You're a student in Peru. I don't know you, but you should know that my entire life is based on the recorder. And what the recorder has brought to my life was a wonderful experience. So the big chance that we have as recorder player is that we have something that is very accessible, that can go a long way in our life. And by having the chance to be exposed to the repertoire and to this beautiful instrument, you just have such a good start into your entire life. I hope that this will be the beginning of many, many wonderful moments now and also later in your life.
Okay. Thank you so much, Matthias, for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jim.